Hello children, it's Mrs Grist. I thought I would record you another story today, but I was going to read you one for slightly older readers. So the book I'm going to read to you is by Michael Morpurgo and it's called Friend or Foe. Some of you might have read some of Michael Morpurgo before, but this is a really easy read and it's set in World War II. I recommended it to some children in year 5, 6, but it would certainly be suitable for children in year 3, 4, 5 or 6. So I'm going to read you chapter 1 and then hopefully you might listen to it and you might think that you might like it. His mother woke him as usual that morning, shaking his shoulder and then kissing him gently as he rolled over. It was pitch black around him, but then he was used to that by now. For months he had slept down in the cellar on the bunks his father had made the last time he was home on leave. "Here's your apple, dear," his mother said. "Sit up and have your apple now." And she patted the pillow behind him as he pushed himself up onto his elbows. He felt the saucer come into his hand. His early morning apple was the only thing that had not changed since the war started. Every morning, as far back as he could remember, his mother has woken him this way, with an apple peeled, cored and quartered, lying open on a white saucer. He felt his mother shifting off the bed and watched for the flare of yellow light as she struck the match for the oil lamp. The cellar walls flickered and then settled in the new light, and the boy saw his mother was dressed to go out. She had her coat on and her hat with the brown feather on the back. It was only then that he remembered. His stomach turned over inside him, and tears choked at his throat. The morning he had thought would never come had come. Every night since he first heard about it, he prayed it might not happen to him, and the night before he had prayed he would die in his sleep rather than wake up and have to go. "You were restless again last night, dear. Did you sleep?" He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. "Come on now, eat your apple and get dressed. Quick as you can, dear. It's 6 o'clock by the station, they said, and it's 1:45 now. I left you as long as I could." 15 minutes left. 15 minutes and he'd be gone. 30 minutes and she would be back in this house without him. She was bending over him, shaking his shoulder. "Please, dear, we must hurry. Eat it now quickly. Miss Roberts said you'd be having a roll and jam on the train, but you must have something before you go." "I don't want it, Mum." He handed the saucer back to her. Only moments before, he had been savouring that first bite of his apple. They were always crisp, always juicy, like nothing else, but now he felt sick at the sight of it. "You must, David. You always have your apple. You know you do." He had upset her and ate it to make her happy, swallowing it like medicine, trying not to taste it. Each bite reminded him that this was the last apple. Once out of bed, he dressed to keep the cold out. His mother was packing his suitcase and he watched everything going in and wondered where he'd be when he took it out again. They said only one case, so there's only room for one change of clothes. "All the things you wanted, they're at the bottom. I'll send on the rest as soon as I know where you'll be." She smoothed down his coat collar and brushed through his hair with her fingers. "You'll do," she said, smiling softly. "Do I have to, Mum? Do I have to go?" Even as he asked, he knew it was useless. Everyone was going from school. No one was staying behind. He was ashamed of himself now. He'd promised himself he'd be brave when he said goodbye. He clung to his mother, pressing his face into her coat, fighting his tears. She crouched down in front of him, holding him by the shoulders. "You remember what I said, David, when I told you your father had been killed? Do you?" David nodded. "I said you'd have to be the man of the house, remember?" He took the handkerchief she was offering. "You never saw your father crying, did you?" "No, Mum." "Men don't cry, see? Try to be a man, David, like your father was, eh?" She chucked him under the chin and straightened the cap on the front of his head. "Come on now, we'll be late." It was still dark up in the street, and a fine drizzle sprayed their faces as they walked away from the house. David looked back over his shoulder as they came to the postbox at the corner and caught a last glimpse of the front steps. He felt his mother's hand on his elbow, and then they were round the corner. Ahead of them there was a glow of fire in the sky. South of the river, his mother said. Battersea, I should say. Poor devils. At least you'll be away from all that, David. Away from the bombs, away from the war. At least they won't get you as well. He was surprised by the grim tone in her voice. Where will you go, Mum? Wherever they send me. Probably to the coast, Kent or somewhere like that. Somewhere where there's anti-aircraft guns, that's all I know. Don't worry, I'll write. Their footsteps sounded hollow in the empty street. They had to step off the pavement to pick their way around the edge of a pile of rubble that was still scattered halfway across the street. That was where the Perkins family had lived. They had been bombed out only a week before they were all killed. Special prayers were said at school assembly for Brian and Gary Perkins, but no one ever mentioned them after that. They were dead after all. In the gloom outside Highbury and Islington Underground Station there was already a crowd of people. Miss Eva's voice rang out over the hubbub and the crying. She was calling out names. His mother pulled at his hands, and they ran the last few yards. Tony Tucker, Tony Tucker. Miss Eva's voice rose to a shriek. Where's Tucky? Has anyone seen Tucky? He's coming, miss. I saw him. What about David Kerry? Is he here yet? Yes, miss. I'm here, miss. David spoke out, pleased at the strength in his voice. Here's Tucky, miss. He's just coming. Right then. Miss Evers folded her piece of paper. We're all here, and it's time to go. Say goodbye as quick as ever you can. The train leaves Paddington at 8:30, and we have to be there at least an hour before. So hurry it up now, and don't forget your gas masks. David felt the case being handed to him. Goodbye, David, and don't worry, it'll be all right. I'll send a letter as soon as I can. God bless. She kissed him quickly on the cheek and turned away. He watched her until she disappeared at the end of the street. All around him there was crying. Boys he'd never dreamt would cry, weeping openly, and mothers holding on to each other as they walked away. He was glad his mother hadn't cried, and it helped him to see so many of his friends as miserable as he felt himself. He blinked back the tears that had gathered in his eyes and wiped his face before turning towards the station. The warmth of the underground came up to meet them, and as the school trooped down the silent, unmoving escalator, they followed Miss Evers along the tunnels, down the stairways and out onto the platform. Tucky came alongside David and dropped his suitcase. Hello, Davy. Hello, Tucky. They were old friends and there was nothing more to be said. And I'm going to stop it there. So that's I haven't read all of chapter 1 because it's quite long, but that's the underground there. And in World War II, children were evacuated. They were sent away from the main cities that the Germans were bombing to keep them safe. And that's what's happening to this little boy. And the story carries on, and the little boy's evacuated, and he goes and stays. Him and his friend go and stay with an elderly couple. And I don't want to tell you anything else because it will give it away. But it's a really good story. I really enjoyed it, and I know a couple of children from year 5, 6 have read it, and they really enjoyed it too. So that might be something that you might like to read, and I'm sure you could probably get it on Amazon. But I hope you're all okay, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Enjoy the sunshine, but make sure you stay safe. Lots of love. Bye.